In this video, I'm going to demo both the LISP commands and the dynamic blocks included with my template. The template's going to be version 2023-0, so there'll be updates over time. If you see a newer version, some of the stuff might be outdated. There might be some new stuff included. So as I go through this tutorial, I actually have, or not a tutorial, more like a demo, I have all these pages printed out in PDF, which I will include. This will always be in the drawing until you delete it. But yeah, just so I don't miss anything, I have those printed out as a PDF, and that, of course, I'll include with the template. Anyways, we're going to go into upload because we have to load all the LISP commands. So I have everything here. This file right here with the VLX ending is required in order for most these files to work. I have 2 reactors in here. If you're not sure about reactors, they just basically do stuff automatically when certain things happen in AutoCAD. That'll become more clear as this video goes on. If you're already using other reactors, you might not want to load these. So you can either select all those, click load this of course, and then at your discretion load these 2 reactors. They just do basic things, so they're not too much to worry about. And of course you can try them out, and as soon as you close AutoCAD they won't be loaded anymore until you add all that stuff to your startup suite. So once you're happy with how everything's working, then you can plug it all into your startup suite, and all the stuff will be loaded automatically every time you start AutoCAD. In my template, virtually all the styles and most of the dynamic blocks are annotative. So the first thing we'll do before we start drawing is we'll pick an appropriate annotation scale. So I'll quickly go through the basic styles first. I have leader shortcuts set for the various type of leaders I use. You'll be able to edit both the shortcuts and the leader styles themselves. So my favorite is my markup leader. It uses a spline leader, which kind of rare in AutoCAD, but you'll love it or hate it, I guess. So that's the leaders. I also have text. T1 is your basic small standard text. T2 is medium-sized text. T3 is your large text. If you type title text, it'll allow you to write out the title, but later I'll show you a little shortcut I have built into these standards where you'll rarely have to actually type that out in full. I did forget a couple leaders. I just have something called stair leader. You won't use this too often, but I found that whenever you have stairs on plan, creating that leader that kind of shows you the direction the stairs go. This makes that a lot easier. And I am thinking about reversing this, having the arrow on this end, just so you draw the leader in the direction, I don't know, that you'd be traversing the stairs. So now these are actually leader styles, but you wouldn't know from looking at them. And as you might be able to tell, and there's a note 3 as well, and the shortcut for that is N3. I don't use those that often because I came up with a LISP command that automatically adds a text box. I'll show you that quickly, but I'll talk about it more later. Now that doesn't quite work perfect, and I'll show you why. You have to have the text's grips have to be set for that to work. But I'll demonstrate that again later in this video. There we go. And the last thing I'll cover here as far as styles are concerned are the dimension styles I have. So I have a special command that allows you to switch the style really quickly. It works on multiple dimensions too. Okay, so that covers styles. So now I'm going to show you the shortcuts I have for my dynamic block inserts. Okay, so I've pre-programmed various shortcuts that just insert a lot of my dynamic blocks automatically. And these all, over time I've developed these, and for me they work great. They may or may not suit your needs, but I can attest that they are very smart designs. So most of my bubbles have this feature where you can shrink the attribute down if the name gets really, really long. So it stops it from spilling over the sides of the bubble, right? So most of these blocks have that feature. This block, if you are able to go into it and see how it works, it actually kind of divulges a secret in how to have multiple visibility states effectively in a single block. I'll give you a hint. It's done with scaling. So I call that my interior elevation callout, and the shortcut's just EC. This is an exterior elevation callout. I have 3 types of titles programmed in, and it automatically adds the text, which is that large title text. So you can just type that out. It will automatically put the scale here. I know that might not be desirable for some people, but you can always go like that. We can always change that if enough people complain, but if enough people like it, then obviously it will stay. So there's also something I call the detail title and the subtitle. So you can see this one adds the medium text, this one adds the large text, and of course this one added the title text. So I have a block, and I'll spend a few minutes on this. It's a elevation marker block. Call that top of footing. Now this has a field, that's why that text has the background. I'll hit regen all, and it'll update. So as this block moves up in the Y direction, this will update. So let's put this here. And just to further demonstrate how this works, so let's say this is top of pedestal. Let's call that level 1. Let's call that top of concrete. So this has a feature where you can actually lift the block up. Now this is important because I'm going to hit refresh. These will update because I haven't hit refresh since copying those. And that one as well, of course. Now this thing inside the block is on the no plot layer, and this is what actually dictates where the displayed elevation is derived from. So I'm going to hit F12, so that updates, of course. I'm going to lower this. I'm going to hit F12. It doesn't update. It all depends on where your basically the base point of the block is. So be very careful if you're using this block. Just be aware if you nudge it or something or you move it, this will change. So if for some reason I wanted to draw this like way up here, and I didn't want to use the drawing coordinates to display elevations, you're going to have to change this block. And I do believe you can overwrite it. You can see the background of that field just disappeared. That means it's no longer a field. It's no longer getting information from the base point of the block, or basically the block's insertion point, right? So anyways, that's that. Let's tidy this up a little bit. So that's more or less how that works. So this block, it is very useful, but do be careful with it. So I have a grid bubble block included with these standards. Now this, it'll default to none the first time you insert it. This is something in the code I probably have to fix, but it won't really affect behavior. So the cool thing about this block is that it the reason my help came up there is because my F1 key is mapped to my match properties. But when you start an AutoCAD session, the F1 key defaults back to help even if you override it. But now whenever I hit F1, hopefully for the rest of this drawing session, it will do what I actually want it to do. Anyways, we'll go back into that grid bubble. If I insert another one, I believe my text is up to 3, 4, right? So I'll run that command again. I'll type T for text, and I'll type 1 again, and that's going to give me, or that's going to set the text back to 1. Now I'm going to type alignment. I'm going to type top because I want to go to the top of that grid line. Click OK. There we go. So now the grid bubble, if I wanted the text to start with, say, A, capital A, B, C, let's do a small a. So of course this only works for single characters, or not counting numbers. So like you can't do like AA, BB, and so on. Let's do alignment left, just so you can see how that works. So basically you just pick the alignment. If you want to go to the top of the grid line, you select top. To the left of the grid line, you select left. To the right, and you kind of get the picture. Okay, so I still have a few more blocks to demonstrate. So one would be my detail callout system. So for me, I kind of like separating my blocks into multiple components, especially if I include the shortcuts. It makes it, I think, quite a bit easier. So there's that. There's my break line system, as you might have guessed was included. So I have break line big, I think, and then break line small. So there's 3 different sizes of break lines to work with. It does include a mask. So when you print, you won't see any of that. That pink line is actually my no plot layer. I guess one thing I've been forgetting to show you guys is that you can type L for layer. So put it on text to make it obvious which layer it goes on. Just throw it on annotations. So that layers. Let's type L. Let's put it on bold, just so you can see. Make it more important, or apparent, rather. So with the section mark, you can actually type L for layer with the section mark as well, and you can put it on any layer you want. And so when you insert it, you can kind of see the difference, the black line versus the blue text line. So these standards, even as is, you can customize them on the fly, kind of. That's kind of, I guess, a good feature of them. So next we're going to look at that text box command again. So remember that when you use that text box, you have to correctly I'll just do a couple of them wrong just so you can see what happens when you... So it's not perfect, it's not undefeatable, but if you get in the habit of setting your grips correctly, my text box command works quite good, and I actually like that better than that using that N1, N2, N3, but I included it in case you actually prefer using that method. And each time you do these, it inserts not inserts, it actually creates a new block, as you can see the KCS boxed text. Okay, so most of the stuff I've demonstrated is kind of like more core features of the template, but I have included a bunch of LISP commands that you may or may not find useful. So just bear with me a second. I'm going to create a 3D box, or rather a fake 3D box. So I've got one command that I use myself quite often. It's make hidden. It basically just turns lines to a hidden line style. Another thing I really commonly use is what I call my hatch rectangle and hatch polyline commands. I also have shortcuts for my wipeout rectangle, my wipeout polyline. So this code, it's something I wrote years back, and I've just carried it with me as I, develop my standards further and further. The neat thing about this code is that I've basically included the source code, and you'll be able to make your own shortcuts for this, which I'll show in another video. So if you wanted to make like a earth hatch or some sort of cross hatch or concrete, you can do that, and you can even make the hatch with your own background color. So that's kind of versatile. So let's do the HPL again. So I have something called my color overriding. system. So this doesn't quite work perfect. This is going to convert objects to a true color. The tricky thing with this dialog box, and this is one reason I'm thinking of gravitating towards the .NET API in AutoCAD, is that a DCL dialog, which is what you use with AutoLisp, you can't have true colors displayed here. So this automatically places a index color which is the closest representation to the true color that we're specifying with these little sliders here. And you can edit them right here as well. You can do 160. If I do color overrides, I like to make my numbers kind of even, right? So I'd probably change this to 240. And I'll show you how the transparency works in just a second. So I'll go to OK. So let's grab these two, or just that one, how about? See if we can lighten it up. So that is going to change to orange color. It's just the gray is unfortunately the closest representation to that orangish color that we have. So that's kind of a flaw or a limitation with this program. Let's change that to that. Kind of want to make that one darker. So unfortunately, I don't have an option where you can only change the transparency. So if we do this again, we're going to change them all at once. But I can go like this. I can change the transparency to 50%. So if we wanted, we could kind of even create a bit of a shadow for our object. Make sure this is all the way back to there. Yeah, so unfortunately I don't got a checkbox where you only do transparency, right? So it's going to kind of force the color on you, unfortunately. So a solution to that would be to simply kind of do like a object here just as like a makeshift place to store your color, and then use the match properties on it after. Okay, so we're on to the last few things I'm going to show you. And these are just small helper functions. So I have actually used it earlier, the CLR function. It just draws a center line. Notice how it doesn't switch me off the layer I was currently in. It just draws a line and places it on a specified layer. So I have a center line blue. I think RL is reference line. And now, I guess this is the last thing I'm going to show you in this video. I haven't thought of a shortcut for it yet, because it's a lot of these commands, if you do find they're overwriting a shortcut you already use, I'm going to show you how to fix that in just a second. But anyways, this is KCS Quick Layers. So what this does is it drags all my layers into a dialog box, and then you just select the layer you want. And the reason I made this is that I find either going through my properties and trying to find the layer through a drop-down, or going to the layer properties dialog and double-clicking, to make it the active layer, takes a little bit of time. And I find this to be way quicker. So it's not the prettiest solution, but for me, this is a huge time saver. So the way this works is it's automatically going to pull in any layer that starts with 3 numerical characters, and then a space, a dash, and a space. So it won't pull in layers. You notice I have layers for my title block. If I scroll down, all that, it'll ignore those. It ignores def points. It ignores layer 0. So I just have to figure out the actual shortcut for this, and then I'm going to plug it into these standards. At the time of recording this video, I haven't done that yet. And one warning with this is if you're making a lot of your own layers with my format, this, I only have it set up to support 60 layers, or it just kicks you out of the command. It won't launch this. And that's because this dialog box will just grow so big that it won't fit on your screen, right? And if that happens, you get an error message and it won't let you run the command anyways. So that's something I haven't really found a solution to quite yet. But that's how that works. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to cover in this video is if you find one of my LISP commands, the alias for it is overwriting one of your commands. I'm going to show you how to fix that without having to necessarily not use the command at all. I'll have a more thorough video on how to edit and create your own, effectively create your own LISP commands. We'll do that with those hatch functions I showed you earlier. But in this video, I'm going to just quickly show you how to deal with a LISP alias that's just not agreeing with something else in your system. So to do this, I'm going to use the Visual Lisp editor. If you do that, make sure your Lisp sys variable is set to 0. But you can use Notepad, you can use Visual Studio Code. Doesn't require any real programming knowledge. You just have to find something, change something, and make sure you don't change anything else. And I'm going to show you really quickly. For me, I'm just going to type vlid to get into the Visual Lisp editor. So now that we're in here, let's see if I can zoom to my top left there. Okay, yeah, so from within the Visual Lisp editor, anytime you see something like this, defun, and then after it a C and a colon, whatever comes after that C and the colon, that's your actual command alias. So prior to making the leaders just numbers, I used to use on an English keyboard, this will be to the left of the 1 key. Just that little, it's not an apostrophe, I think it's something else, I forget. Maybe someone can help me in the comments below. But I used to have a 1, and then this would have been the 2 of those, and then a 1. There were reasons for that, but I just simplified it. I don't know, I'm actually thinking about going back, but I'm kind of worried. I don't know if keyboards in other languages actually have that symbol on it, so I just felt it was safer to do that. You can do like L1, L2 and stuff if you wanted with the leaders, but then you have to jump across the keyboard a little bit too, right? So what I did is I just changed it to 1, right? So you can see that all these shortcuts are just placed for you. If you wanted to change that stair leaders shortcut, that's there for you. Now all the source code's in this file, and you're going to find things like this. This is just kind of my style of writing sub-functions, or functions that cannot be run from the command prompt. So even though there's a colon in the name of this, that means nothing. Unless it's a C and a colon and only that, whatever follows that will be the command alias. So this is not a command line alias. This in its entirety, this symbol might as well be this. In AutoLisp could actually be that. You know, it doesn't really matter what it is. And I'll mention again, don't edit stuff in this file unless you actually know AutoLisp and you want to change things. And because even if I accidentally put some characters here, for example, and reloaded that, this would not work after that, just to let you know. But yeah, so that's just basically how you change your command aliases. All you have to do is open this file up either in the Visual Lisp editor, which I like because this will show blue, the brackets will show red. You can do it through Notepad. So if I wanted to activate those changes, let's say if I actually changed something and I actually wanted to have it active in the current drawing session, I just click this symbol right now, load active edit window, and then when I run that command, it'll be changed for me. If you do that in Notepad, you'll have to save the file, and it won't take effect until you restart AutoCAD. Okay, so I wanted to talk about one more thing in this video. I actually almost forgot. That's the reactors that I mentioned earlier. So I have 2 reactors. One's for revision clouds, and the other is for viewports. Okay, so let's talk about the revision cloud reactor first. I've set this up to do 2 things. The first thing it will do is it actually changes the arc length based on your annotation scale. I'll take the time right now to say that this code is set up for AutoCAD 2023, and I don't know how many years ago, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, they changed the variable that controls the arc length. So if you're in an older version of AutoCAD, I'll need to adjust the code to cope with that. It only works in newer versions of AutoCAD. So anyways, as you can see, when I change my scale, the revision cloud arc length kind of changes size to suit. So that's the first thing that it does. The second thing that it does, and this is hard coded in and is why a reason why maybe some of you won't want to use this reactor, is that it changes the layer to my markup layer. So one more thing I'll add to the revision cloud reactor is sometimes you'll open a drawing, you'll use the revision cloud, and the settings won't be suitable for your scale. So I'd say to fix that, all you have to do is toggle it to another scale, and then back to the scale you're using, and that'll make sure the reactor actually fires. Unless the reactor fires in the drawing, basically by the event of changing the annotation scale, it won't change that variable for you. So let's just add a note. Warning, elevation was over. So I don't think I mentioned that I also have a text for what I call markups to go along with the leader and the revision cloud. So that's that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is the reactor for viewports. And again, this has my viewport layer kind of hard-coded in, right? So let's just change that to, let's say, 1/4. Kind of made a mess of my drawing, but is what it is. I'll try to get that box in there. I want to see what that prints like. Let's lock that. Get out of the viewport. Yeah, so that reactor is pretty simple. I do have other reactors. I had one that automatically changes the thickness of the polyline, of a polyline based on your annotation scale. But again, that might cause more trouble for users than it's worth. So I haven't included that. Reactors, they work great, but you got to use them sparingly. So anyways, let's do a print preview. You can see how my break line mask works. So that's about all I wanted to cover in this video. Basically the dynamic blocks and the LISP commands included with my template. The video was made for the 2023-0 version of my template. If you do have any questions relating to anything you saw in the video or the template itself, feel absolutely free to leave a comment below. And with that said, I gotta say thanks for your interest and thanks very much for watching.